In June 2023, the Wall Street Journal reported that China had been secretly paying Cuba billions of dollars to build a spy base. This news sent shockwaves through the US government as it signaled a significant shift in power dynamics between the two nations. Forget about the days when Chinese apps posed the greatest threat to national security. We're talking about a cutting-edge surveillance base, positioned just 100 miles off Florida's coast.
China is in talks with Cuba to establish a spy base on the island nation.
Chinese players are already in Cuba as we speak.
The administration has confirmed that China has been operating a spy base in Cuba since at least 2019.
According to the report, the base would allow China to conduct signal intelligence, a type of spying that involves intercepting emails, phone calls, and other data. This base would give the Chinese military a clear advantage in identifying potential target ships in the North Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf of Mexico. It would also enable them to spy on US bases near the coast and potentially store nuclear missiles there during times of conflict. While China already has outposts in locations like the South China Sea and the Horn of Africa for monitoring communications, this would be their first base in the Western Hemisphere. As shocking as this news may seem, this isn't the first time the US has had to deal with a threat like this. For over 50 years, Cuba has been a prime spot for rival nations to gather intelligence on the United States. China seems to be taking a page out of the USSR's playbook from October 1962. Remember when the Soviet Union secretly planted nuclear missiles in Cuba, aimed at launching devastating attacks on the US?
This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba, than to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere.
Thankfully, an agreement was eventually reached, and the missiles were withdrawn.
The Soviet government has ordered the dismantling of weapons in Cuba, as well as their crating and return to the Soviet Union.
After the Cuban Missile Crisis, former US President John F. Kennedy imposed travel restrictions and economic sanctions on Cuba. Some remain in effect today. By the way guys, if you enjoyed watching the video so far, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. When it comes to Cuba and China, it's clear that they share some striking similarities. Not only do both countries have a rocky relationship with the United States, but they are also on the receiving end of US sanctions. It's almost like a classic case of, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Initially, the US brushed off Chinese base reports. The Biden administration eventually confirmed its presence, revealing that China had operated a spy base on the island since 2019.
This is not a new development. That China's been trying to achieve some intelligence gathering capabilities in Cuba and frankly elsewhere in the hemisphere.
This incident also brings to mind the rogue balloon incident, where a seemingly harmless balloon flew over the US bases for months, gathering intelligence. It was later discovered that it was equipped with an array of powerful surveillance devices. Now with a permanent base established so close to the US, China has the potential to do much more than gather intelligence. Adding fuel to the fire, recent diplomatic moves have intensified tensions. President Biden sent CIA Director William Burns on a clandestine trip to Beijing, followed by US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's visit. Just a day later, President Biden called Xi Jinping a dictator. Beijing took the remarks as extremely absurd and irresponsible, and said they seriously violated facts, diplomatic protocol, and China's political dignity. Beijing is likely to argue that the Cuban base is justified due to US military and intelligence activities near China. The US sells weapons to Taiwan, which China considers a rebellious region. It also deploys troops there for training purposes and sends Navy ships through the Taiwan Strait. The future of US-China relations is hanging by a delicate thread. The presence of this spy base in Cuba serves as a strong reminder that a tense battle is underway, reminiscent of a modern Cold War.